Hi everybody, this is Ben Baxter with Accent Software. Today we're going to do another tip on Business Central. This one's going to be a little bit more in depth. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about configuration packages. This is where you control the data coming in and you can also send it out of your system. And this includes master files such as customers, vendors, items. It can be journals, worksheets, things like that. Quick ways to get data, usually in multiple tables, in and out quickly. Normally there aren't this many configuration packages in the system. This is a test environment, so don't pay any attention to that. What we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new one for master files. And so this is going to be where we import those key customer tables, vendor tables, item tables, things like that. So you can do more tables than one at a time. You can always restrict it if you want to be specific to just one table. You do get pop-ups on key tables that ask if you want the related tables to come in. I don't want the related tables for this one. I just want the master files. So again, I'm going to do my customer, vendor, and item table. Do get the prompt every time, so just work through the system, make sure you're aware of what you're doing. And now once I've selected my tables, the next thing you're going to want to do is whittle down the number of fields available. So in this case, I have 116 fields available in my customer table. I do not need all of that, so I'm going to whittle it down. And you also have the number of fields to validate. You do want to leave the validation on. There are cases where we will turn this off. I highly recommend you leave it on 99.9% of the time. Unless you're the partner supporting the client, do not turn off the validation. You can really make mistakes in your data and your structure of your data when you turn that off. Please don't do it. Another key important table to avoid is this delete table records before processing. I would suggest you hide this field from the screen so that you don't accidentally turn it on. It's one of those fields where you can make very drastic mistakes in your environment if you have that accidentally checked when you run the apply process. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select our customer table and we're going to whittle down the number of fields available for our import into the system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the fields option. This does put me in a non-edited list, so I need to come up and click edit list. Make it easy on yourself. If you know you're only doing specific fields, hit this clear included button. And what it does is it takes all the fields out of the list except for the primary keys, which in my customer table is just the number field. Now I do want the name, I'm going to want their address, probably address 2 for the suite, city, there's a state, I want the zip code, I want their phone number, their email. So I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to run through, fill out some fields, and then we'll look at it here in a second. Okay, so we're back to it. I've taken a little pause to update the table. So you'll notice now number of fields available went from 116 to 13. Okay, that's how much you can really whittle these things down if you're trying to be very specific with the data, because a lot of the fields, they get filled in based on validation. When you validate, the base unit of measure, the sales and purchasing unit of measure can fill in. Now, if they're different, then sure, go ahead and include those fields, but you generally don't need to. So we're going to look at some of these. What I've done is you have your list of fields, and I had to move some things around. On this list, city, county, which is really state, and the zip code were further down in the list. The fields were higher numbers. You can see field 92, 91, 35. So I had to move the fields up and down. And the reason I do that is so that when I have my Excel sheet, the fields are in sequential order. The columns are in the order I want, left to right. Starting from the top, it'll be the customer number, their name, address, suite number, city, state, zip, country, phone number, email, salesperson, and then tax information. Try to make it readable left to right, so top to bottom, and that makes it where it's easy to understand. And the way you do that is these move up, move down buttons up at the top. So as I move it down, you'll see it drop in the list. As I move it back up, it goes up. That's how you move things up and down. The next component to this would be mapping. If I have payment terms codes where it's 30D versus 30 days, you can create mappings that say from the old system it's going to export as 30D, but in my new system I've set up the field to be 30 days. And so I have a mapping that says whenever you encounter the value 30D in the payment terms code, it translates it and writes it to Business Central as 30 days. It allows you to do that kind of mapping. The other thing you can do when it comes to exporting data is you can add filters. If I'm exporting my customer list, I may only want to export customers in a specific country or in a specific customer posting group. I can do that through a filter to apply that rule before I export my data. So instead of getting 582 customers, I get 80 customers. Easier amount of data to process, speeds up the export process as well, especially when you get into item records and there's 100,000 items in your system. You want to be able to get the data in and out quickly. So don't export and import the entire list. Export and import the items that you're working on. And don't restrict yourself to a single configuration package. So this is one for master files, customers, vendors, items. If you'll note on my items, it's very simple information. I didn't include any of the planning data or replenishment system, reorder policy, things like that. I will have a separate configuration policy for specific functional areas that I want to update regarding the item record. That way I can do my mass import of all of my items, and then I can do a secondary process to clean up all of the planning data, or to be able to export and re-import to make changes as time goes on. So don't feel you have to include everything in one massive configuration package. Break it into multiple ones to make it easier to process the data, apply those filters, and that sort of thing. The other big thing to note is I don't have my posting groups in here. I don't have the customer posting, the general business posting. I don't have fields like payment method code or payment terms code. Well, if I want it to be something generic for everything, I'm going to use something called a data template. And so in my case, I just have the one. We'll go ahead and look at it. And it includes my posting groups, a location code, payment terms code, payment method code. These are things that I want filled in for every customer in the system. Now, location code could vary if you have multiple locations and it's very specific to the customer's geographic area. So that may be one that falls off, but in my case, I want to force it into a specific main location, and then I'll update after the fact to be specific with the ones that I want to adjust. So for values that apply to everybody across the board, you can be setting up these data templates to apply the data you want right out of the gate. You don't have to add it to Excel. You don't have to copy down all the way through your list. This will just apply it right out of the gate for everybody on that import. And you don't have to have just a single one. So for customers, I may have a domestic one so that it applies different posting groups, it may apply a different country code, whatever the case may be. You can set up as many data templates as you want. Just make sure you have the right one assigned when you do the apply data, because that is going to be what is entered onto the record when it goes in the system. And I have one for vendors as well, so I'll add that to it. And then processing, you simply export it to Excel. If I have the export option from the lines level menu, it is only going to do the number of tables that I have highlighted. So if I click it once, it's going to be for one table. If I have two tables highlighted when I do the export, it'll tell me it's doing the two selected tables. If I do the export from the top level, it is going to do all tables at one time. Regardless of how many I have selected, it will do all of the tables in the package. So if I'm only doing vendors, then I want to use the menu to export and import. If I'm doing everything, then I'll use my export and import from the header, where I do all tables, and each table will end up in its own tab within the Excel spreadsheet. I'm not going to export this because it's a testing environment with actual testing data, so I don't want to share that data, but I want you to at least see the process, understand how it works. When I am doing this, I'm going to export it to Excel. Once it's in Excel, you can wipe all the data out of it without impacting what's in BC. It will only import back in what is in Excel. So even though I've deleted those records, they still exist in BC. So I'm only importing in what's new. Now, if I have added to that Excel sheet customers that already exist in my worksheet, it will modify them. And so you'll have a list of new records created, records modified, and then any records that went into an error state because the data doesn't make sense. You've added a zip code that doesn't exist in your BC environment. You've added a country code that doesn't yet exist, or a payment terms code that doesn't yet exist. So there's ways to handle those different error messages and adjust as needed, but you're going to export it as a template, clear it, or adjust the data. Once you've saved your Excel file, you're going to import it from Excel, which will show you the number of package records. So this would be the number of records you're going to be importing. And then once you are satisfied with the data, which you can preview, so you can always drill into that number of package records to see how the data came into Business Central, then you're going to use apply data. And what that's going to do is it's going to start writing that package data into your database records. And so this count will generally go up. It does not go down unless you use the delete table record. Again, I do not recommend this for users. Avoid this as much as possible. You need to be a very proficient config package person to use that field. That's how configuration packages work. They're a great tool to import and export from multiple tables at one time. Good uses of this are items with item tracking. If I'm going to import them into an item journal, I cannot do it through Edit in Excel. I need to have a table for the item journal and a separate table for the item tracking information so that I can import the item journal lines and then the item tracking that will relate to those lines. So those are functional uses for configuration packages. There's a ton of them. So play with them, be very careful, use this in a sandbox first to get up to speed on how to use it before you try to do it in your production data. That's what I wanted to cover on configuration packages. I hope it was really helpful. There's a lot more that you can do with this that I didn't even scratch the surface on. Reach out to us if you need assistance. We have a great team here at Accent Software that will support you in data migration, movement to Business Central, upgrading Business Central, supporting your existing system, all of those things we are very capable of helping you out with. We do specialize in manufacturing, so that is the industry that we target. But in terms of the base use of the software, we can help pretty much everybody. So with that, I want to say thank you for watching the video, spending time learning about your system. Hopefully you liked the video, subscribed to our channel, and sent this out to a couple friends. Our contact information will be up on screen. Feel free to use our support email that will get to our support team.